a nice, whatever you would call it. We didn't grow up poor or abused or anything. Wasn't mistreated, and I'm just so thankful for that. I don't know what to do, but
No.
children never felt judgmental about. They don't feel that way about, you to try to say, well, that was the wrong thing to do. Now, one of them told me that and I guess it was, I don't know which one of them told me they couldn't believe that I would have had a part in that, knowing how.
That was Willis. You told me.
So they were like mad at Mama and mad at me, and they didn't.
Oh, well, I was wondering if Eva Morrison was being left out of all this. Because she's the very one that just wouldn't have it any other way.
And it was because of the family, Charlotte. That's how we were raised. That's why I don't want. I still have some of that left in me about their opinion or something, and who in the, because that's how we grew up. Is if we had been free from all those people and how vicious they were, and they were vicious. Essie was vicious, but so was Aunt Savannah, and so, they all were really back in those days. They would have just crucified Mother. And if we had been
and me,
if we had been free of that, we had just been a family somewhere, and she hadn't had that bondage. That they were all like prisoners of each other's gossip. Their whole life was built around it. If we'd have been free from that, I think it would have been different for us. I think we'd have been able to have done it differently. Of course, a lot of families have take that option to do that. If I mean, a lot of people choose to. A lot of women do choose to.
But it wasn't my choice. I'll never believe it was my choice. I was never given another option.
But I think it would have been different for us if it hadn't been for the family. Because, it never mattered to me. All of us have always never thought you had to have a lot of money to do something. We've always money wouldn't have mattered. And we had adequate, we could have made a way. As far, it wasn't the money. It wasn't that. It wasn't that it would have been any trouble. It wasn't that. It was strictly because of Mother could not face that.
Well,
and like Barbara, I told Barbara, I said, just like you and, just like Pat would never have, she took Melissa, and they just believed that somebody would come along and love me. Miss Shin said somebody will come along and love her and the baby, and of course Ray did. She ran him off, but
Melissa told Mark that Mother tried to get her to have an abortion with Justin.
Yeah, Mother. I can remember when Mother was in the hospital, and I spent the night with her she said she just at the hospital. She's ruined her life. She's ruined her life. So that was, and boy, they really they was horrible about Melissa. They was horrible about her. I can remember Mommy would even talk to me about her and say she's proud of being pregnant. She called her and told Garden she was pregnant, like she was proud of it, like she'd done something. So they just really did. So I don't want that to be a part of my life anymore.
No, me neither. If I ever go back, I don't know. I may keep in touch with Bibi, but simply because she was supportive to me about Mike. And she said that if she had known it, she would have fought for me. But, of course, back then it may have been a different story. 30 years later, people say what they would have done. But she seemed to be happy about it, Randy. But I'd never heard how your children felt.
Well, they would love to me. Is that what you mean about how they?
Well, how they felt about me.
Well, they love you, Charlotte. My children would never think about being judgmental about you. I mean, they love you. And they don't usually say anything harsh about Mama, but that was one time where they felt like it was wrong. It was the wrong thing for Mother to do it. And they don't understand about, of course, we didn't live in Shreveport, but they don't understand about, um, somebody controlling you, the fear of somebody, what somebody thinks controlling you, controlling somebody like it did Mother. They don't. I can remember a lot of things Mother would say, "Don't you dare say that. Don't you dare let anybody say that or something." It was just that's all she cared about was wanting them to think, the family to think that her children were great or wonderful or something. I don't know. And they all treated Mother terrible. Mommy did.
Yeah. So I'm sorry that she had that much control over me to this day about that. At that time, now it wouldn't have happened that way because I'm a stronger person. But then I wasn't.
Well, it was hard for me to ever do anything if Mother told me not to. Of course, she forbid me to marry Ting, but I did, that. But she would just, whatever her and Daddy said do, I didn't many times think of not doing what she said to do. She was a real controller. She was a past master at controlling people, but.
So I didn't know how anybody felt, and I hadn't heard anything about. I haven't heard any comments from Teen. This is something nobody's talked about still. But
well, they was all glad that they was glad that you was able to find him from the very minute that you decided to look for him. They all thought that would be good. But the thing about men most of the time is they are so caught up in their own, they're doing on their own thing or whatever they're doing that they can't get into somebody else's pain, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. They just feel like that it was bad. I wanted them to know when, I guess I'd never talked about it. We'd never just sit down and talked about it until you found him, and then I wanted them to know. And I said, did you know that, I think to each one of them, I said, did you know that Charlotte had a son that she gave up for adoption? And seems like they did, or somehow. Maybe Willis did, and I think maybe Tim did. So I don't know if we'd ever talked about it. I don't know how they knew, or if we talked about it or what. And so then I went on, and so they were saying that was great. And then the fact that he was a musician, well, they thought that was just amazing. Bubba did too. Everybody was just astounded to hear that. And so it was just real interesting to them. And they was glad to know that they had a cousin. Glad you found him. And so, of course, when I was talking to him about it, I cried. And when I was telling him about the story, I think I got real emotional every time I was talking to him. And so that makes my children uncomfortable. If I cry, and I was crying about it, and they was, they all was saying, well, it was a bad thing, but, a bad thing that Mother did that, and that it caused so much pain for so long, for so many years. But there's some things that, just like the death of a child, I don't think that would ever stop hurting you. Some things that you do.
Well, it never stops hurting for me because of the years we lost.
Well, because at the time it happened, it was such a tearing and a ripping. You don't ever, just such a ripping apart. And because I've heard other women say that sometimes women feel that way that have abortions, but especially if women have a child and it's adopted. And so, my friend in Clearwater, her daughter's having so much trouble now. That little boy is 5 years old, and she knows where he is. A doctor has him. They took her and paid all her bills and everything, and it was her decision. And Ollie, she said if she had ever dreamed it was going to end up like this with Beth being like that, she would have encouraged her to keep it. But Beth herself decided that that's what she wanted to do, and this doctor and his wife have the child, and she knows, you know, she knows where he is and everything.
But you still don't get to raise
But
him.
she is cuckoo. She is just, she's had a
You can't get over it if you...
suicide attempt, and now every time I ask about her, I still say, how's Beth? And she'll say, well, she's still, you know, has all those terrible depressions and can't keep a job. She goes from job to job. So finally she couldn't keep a job, and Ollie just let her, Ollie moved in with a friend and let Beth go and live at her house. She just, so, and then her daddy died.
Well, it's something you never get over. Even if she ever gets to have a relationship with him, you still don't get over the loss.
But even with her knowing that he, you know, has this really good life and everything, it hasn't helped her to cope with it.
No.
But you know, to me, now just like those pictures of Mike when he was a little boy, I can't get them. I have to turn them on. I can't look at them. But I think we just have to build on what we have. There's comes a time when you have to just start building on what you have for your own mental health. You know, you're not any good to anybody, and just excessive grief it just cripples you. It's like a handicap. It keeps you from functioning like well. And I think for the sake of the people that we have in our lives, we need to, you know, just build on the positive things. Because we certainly have a lot to be thankful for. Well, is that why you said you was going to call me, was about
Yeah.
Barbara?
Yeah. And Mike, to talk about it, how everybody feels. Because if I was being condemned by everybody, I was just going to cut myself off like Sophie's done.
No. I'd like to call Sophie and find her, but I think Barbara Kennedy is the only person that would ever, if it was the only person, and you know, that would ever want to drag up something. My opinion of it was because she didn't get a chance to talk about it 30 years ago or gossip about it, that she couldn't stand it. It was eating her lunch. And she wanted to get the chance to now, and I guess nobody will gossip about it because nobody, I guess Pat just said, she just said Barbara wanted to start talking about it. I guess it wasn't like she was just saying, you know, how nice it was or anything like that. And Pat said, well, you know, if 30 years ago she would have been, this family would have condemned her. And then when Pat told me that, I said, yeah, they didn't get a chance. Barbara didn't get a chance to 30 years ago, so she don't want to miss out on the opportunity. And that was just me. Maybe it wasn't like that at all. Maybe Barbara was just curious. Who knows? Maybe me and Pat took it wrong.
No.
But I knowing Barbara like I do, and
Yeah.
never having heard her say one kind thing about anybody,
Mm-mm.
I took it. The way I took it was that she wanted to say something condemning about it. But certainly none of, you know, none of my, and what would there be to condemn? Which one of us could condemn anybody for doing anything? I mean,
about what I should have done or whatever. Well, I know full well what I should have done, but I had nowhere to go. I had nowhere to go.
I never have heard anybody in our family, not Bubba, of course, who blames Mama too, but he always wants to drag up stuff she did to him, Mama and Daddy did to him, as every time but he, and not one person in my family, not Ting or any of my children, have ever said, well, she shouldn't have, or she should have. They've never said that. They just said it was a terrible thing and to happen, and they were sure it had affected you all your life, And, you know, that was the only thing they've ever said was that they, you know, was in some way not, I wouldn't say it was sympathy, but certainly compassion or understanding would be more like it. And I don't know of anybody. Bibby, she never thought to condemn you. Moni did. I never heard, Kathleen's never said anything, mentioned it to me, and I'm sure Moni knows about it, and I'm sure she, you know, has never said anything in a condemning fashion, and I don't know of anybody else I've ever discussed it with.
Well, I didn't know, so...
I'm sure they've raked me over the coals and talked about me behind my back all my life, but I just can't